whatever.
Yeah. I don't know.
I did start the recording.
My time for sure.
Is this just making?
Smells good? No. It's still like that. Also should answer. But you take careful notes. Mine looks like.
Yeah.
Mine is such a mess and I have to get moved all the time.
Yeah, I do that. I get stuck on something and then I don't eat them for a long time. Yeah. I do this.
What a lot of work. And all my stuff for tonight, tomorrow.
One bacon.
Outside night.
Okay.
Church every day. man.
Okay. The letter, the final letter is in my. Yeah.
Call to order the city council meeting for January 11th, 2025. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Wolfersberger.
Here.
Member Cheney Huggett. Here. Member Gates. Member Hackworth.
Here.
Member Traver.
Here.
We have a quorum, Your Honor.
You. Gonna wait and see if that was Member Gates real quick before I. It's not, okay. I would seek a motion to excuse Member Gates. Thank you. Support. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Do not have an invocation today, so we'll rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda today, we have public comment on agenda items. We have our consent agenda, which is simply our city council meeting minutes from our meeting on January 6th. No presentations, no informational items, no public hearings, no old business. The reports, we have 12A 2024 action plan review. Member Gates.
Scott, excuse me, could you speak up just a little bit? I'm having trouble hearing you.
I can try.
Okay. All right.
12B, we have our 2026 through 2031 capital improvement program. Item C, capital/special projects funding. 12D, 2025 action plan. We have no appointments. Then we'll have our public comment on non-agenda items, council manager communications, and our adjournment. Seek a motion to approve to the day's agenda, please.
Move.
Motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We'll move to public comment on agenda items. Persons addressing city council are required to give their name and address for the record when called upon by the mayor. Members of the public shall be limited to speaking for a maximum of 3 minutes. Comments shall address, Comments shall address agenda item topics. Public hearing items should be addressed during the public hearing portion. Item 10 of the meeting agenda, non-agenda items shall be addressed during the public comment, non-agenda items. Item 14, portion of the meeting agenda. Anyone present wish to address council today on agenda items? Go ahead. Adams?
No microphone. All right, Barry Wayne Adams, 612 West Green Street, number 1. What is the agenda? You know, this tells you nothing. I mean, and it's a routine procedure that you guys seem to always do, is to make it as vague and indistinct as possible. So what are the agenda items? But I gotta give you notice on Article 1, Section 5, Michigan Constitution, no law shall be enacted to restrain or abridge freedom of speech. There's no authority in the Open Meeting Act. There's no, that's a law. Constitution says no law. So you don't have any authority to tell what we can talk about or actually how long we can talk about stuff. Other municipalities are starting to realize this hoax on the Constitution, and they're starting to be a little more liberal in their giving an opportunity for people to make public comment. Again, more complex ideas take longer to explain. And when you try to regulate our comment time to 3 minutes, you're pretty much telling us that you don't consider us to be anything more than having a third grade education. That's about the attention span of a third grader, 3 minutes. So, we want representative government. We want authentic representative government that upholds the Constitution and our rights. It's our rights that are the primary focus of your government, not capitulation to corporate agendas. All right, why 9 o'clock Saturday morning to have a city council meeting? And is this a workshop or is it an actual city council meeting? Well, you're dealing with previous city council minutes, so it's obviously a city council meeting. Why aren't you up in the chamber? So what is the real agenda? What is the real underlying motivation for having to do these procedural sleight of hand trickery? You probably should be in your planning and deciding how you're going to direct the city. That the Department of Defense just severed all contractual relationships with CATL and will no longer have any contracts for military issues. And that goes in addition to Homeland Security blacklisting CATL for its slave labor activities. Don't participate in slave labor.
Mr. Adams, anyone else wishing to address council? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Lynn Slight. I live at 507 Fair Street, Marshall. Marshall is my home. Thank you, Barry, for what you said. I second everything he said. And I'd like to add, there are 9 seats here. 9 for the whole community. What would you have done if we'd actually been able to show up? Really? That was what we get. You know why we didn't show up? It's Saturday morning, 9 o'clock Saturday morning. So I walk in here. I went upstairs because that's where meetings are held. But you were not there. So I was directed to come down here. Sure enough, I took my seat in one of the 9. While I was up there, I found this little propaganda. Mia Reed. We all want clean, healthy water. For one, I don't trust you. You've completely lost the trust of myself and much of the citizens. We are citizens of Marshall. This is our home. Our home, as in, we will defend it. We have the legal rights to defend it. And this government needs to understand that because we are not done fighting this. We are in no way, shape, or form done fighting the corruption that's destroying our land, our home, our river. We, the people. Way back, May 1st, 2023, you, as the City Council of Marshall, had the opportunity to listen to us. You had the opportunity for hours. My God, we were there till like 2 a.m, begging, pleading, trying to be decent humans, trying to talk. And all we got was a gavel. A gavel. Nope. Not even gonna discuss it. Not even gonna discuss it. I went home and I wanted to puke. And I have not recovered from that day, and neither have many of us. I will not let go of the fact that you did not listen to the people. We had experts in this field. We will be heard.
Anyone else wishing to address council? Yes, sir.
Regis Klingler, 348 Butler Court, Marshall. Again, this meeting is quite unusual. We were told it was an annual thing. If it was an annual meeting, why was it on the scheduled meetings that was officially recognized in December? It was not on there. Rather short notice of this meeting, 9 a.m. on Saturday. Could have been at 1 a.m. on Saturday, 9 a.m. Yeah, not very convenient for the city. Glad to see that the FOIA policy and procedures is being revised or looked at anyway in the next year. It definitely needs some revision and listening to the people on it. Again, I see in the draft action plan for next year, continuing to figure out what the land use that is remaining in the mega site will be. Again, I hope you have hearings and have input from the people on that, not just from MEDA, but from the people. Yeah, it was promised before that you'd be more transparent. Again, the capital improvement plan is going to be discussed, have a public hearing on it, meeting. Again, I think that it's kind of out of the right procedure. You should have the master plan really finalized before you finalize the capital improvement program, because that is supposed to direct your actions for the next 5 years. Not sure how you could do that when it's not done and finalize the capital improvement program. That just seems backward to me. I know that's an annual thing, but the 5-year plan has not been updated as it should have been in 2020. Now 2025, it's been 5 years. Should have been done years ago. So again, I hope you do that. And again, environmental person on the city staff is definitely needed. And I hope you can incorporate that in the 2026 budget. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address council today? Being none, we will move to our consent agenda. Any comments or questions regarding city council minutes from January 6th? Being none, I'd seek a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support. Motion support. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And we will move to our 12A, 2024 action plan review. I believe this is City Manager Perry.
All right, good morning. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone assembling here at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning. As stated in public comments, this is something typically that we do, well, at least we have done since I've been here to discuss the action plan. Again, prior to my arrival, I'm not sure how city council handled goals, or if they were even done, or if they were as detailed as an action plan. But this is what we've utilized as an opportunity to bring our entire management team together with city council to go through that in some level of detail and provide any answers to the questions that you may have versus the normal business meeting that we hold typically. So again, that's why we're here. The first item on the agenda is the 2024 action plan review. City council received that review on Monday night. It was accepted. We will place that on the website. But again, this is the opportunity where we have the entire management team here. So as you've had the opportunity to review that document, if something struck you as, hey, I'd like a little more detail with that or answer any questions, that's why we have that on the agenda this morning. So that's really its purpose. If there are no questions, we can move right on into the CIP. So.
Thank you, Manager Perry. Are there any questions regarding the 2024 action plan? I did have one, on the improvements, at FiberNet. How are those going?
So they're actually proceeding quite well. I mean, thanks to city council, you approved bringing in a consultant to review that. And really what the consultant did is affirmed some of our concerns that we had. The consultant was able to provide us really some good third-party vendors in order for us to utilize going forward. One was on the network administration side. We are a small operation. We actually have one part-time network administrator. We have brought on a company called Hyperion, and they provide us that 24/7 support for that position that we have in the city. So if there are issues after hours or when that person's not available, they can jump on those. We've increased active monitoring of the network to the point where, again, sometimes prior to having them on board, we would react to maybe when customers report to us that there was a problem. We now have active monitoring of the network to know when there's going to actually be a potential problem in order for us to be a little more nimble and react to that. The other piece was the after hours customer service. People would call, 2 a.m. when they're gaming on their Xbox and have an issue, right? Well, didn't have anyone in the office. We now have a company, EPB, which city council approved several months ago, that by the end of the month, that's the agency that our customers will be able to contact if they're having those issues. And they have essentially what I call keys to the kingdom, to where they should be able to basically solve the problem while the customer's on the phone. And before, we never really had that capability. What we were doing was, you called after hours, you got our third-party answering service, they created a ticket. Sometimes they were successful in transferring that ticket to us. Sometimes they would tell our customers bad information, like, we'll have a tech come out there tomorrow morning, but we never actually were made aware of that issue. So leaps and bounds where we were, I would say, 24 months ago, 12 months ago. And again, that EPB will be finally spun up and working by the end of the month. So feel real good about that. In addition to that, we brought on a city employee that's shared with the Department of Public Services. That individual actually started this week or previous week. And that is an individual that when someone calls the Department of Public Services or FiberNet, that's a city employee voice that person will hear, at least during normal business hours. So we think that that's a large increase in customer service too. So, and then that person will also help us on the communication side of things and the press releases. And I think you've even seen an uptick maybe in our Facebook postings this week. And that's because we actually have a dedicated person that's been able to do that. So there's been 2 or 3 postings just on some things like the stop signs that are on a road and some construction. So again, we think we've raised the bar with that too. The next big piece of that will be looking at our infrastructure. So the switches and the routers that we have are original to the original build. And we know that we have to upgrade some of those systems too. So that's the next piece. And then we need to move into a marketing and a communication plan too, to talk about our system and why you should, go with the city of Marshall FiberNet versus maybe a competitor who originally may sound like they have these great rates, but then you start calculating taxes and their rental of their modem, and all of a sudden their bottom level price really isn't all that competitive compared to what we do, because we are one fixed price. So anyways, that's how I see where we're at and where we're heading.
Thank you. Any other question?
I have a question on the activation zones. What is the plan for the shared dumpsters space with the businesses and residences there?
Yeah. Marguerite, do you want to speak to that? The shared dumpsters, I know that's on your radar.
Yes. So the city, we need to execute that program still. So we have, the plan is to create a group of participants within the block, within the area. So there's a dumpster in lot 9, which is the lot on Jefferson Street. And then there's bigger dumpster enclosure in lot 10, which is the one behind Schuler's, behind Copper. And we need to, I have some information, but essentially we need to gather all the information of what everyone in those blocks is doing for their service. And then get a contract with Granger going to provide a dumpster there that would be paid for by the city. And then we're gonna implement a service billing those commercial users for that service. And we just need to get that, just the task of getting that all corralled is what we need to do.
You anticipate that being a similar fee to what they're paying now or any sort of cost savings for using the dumpster?
I certainly would hope it's some cost savings because we would be able to empty that dumpster more frequently because in theory, it would probably fill up more than what each individual unit is getting. But it's one location and it's like 2 dumpsters, right? So I would anticipate some cost savings. Now, there's some services like grease for a couple of the businesses there that we're not gonna provide. That's a whole nother kind of animal outside of, recycling cardboard and trash. And the recycling and the trash is what we're gonna focus on for those dumpster enclosures. Plan is to do an outreach to those businesses. We have a database of those businesses from our activation zone work. We also have an active subscription database in the websites Notify Me from the construction work, and reach out to them, have them fill out a survey form, what's your service, what's your volume, what's your container today, and how often does it get picked up, so that we are making sure that we're setting up the contract for the community service appropriately.
Including residents as well that live there on that stretch?
Yes, the plan would be every building within that block. But ideally, we get rid of all of the dumpsters outside of Greece and adjacent to the alley.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
How many are there right now? 4 or 5 probably.
There's
Dumpsters.
several, there's 4 or 5, like what we would call front load commercial dumpsters, but there's several residential dumpsters, like Kirby carts that are there as well. For some businesses use Kirby carts and some have the Kirby carts for the residents on the 2nd floor, 3rd floors.
Yeah, there's.
Any other questions?
Yeah, now that we kind of have FiberNet dealing an upswing, we hope. It does seem that the summer and this fall we're having more electrical outages than I ever remember having in one year in Marshall. And I don't know if it's an infrastructural thing that we need to address, or if it's something that was just unusual circumstances that caused those. And I know that there has been some unusual circumstances, but I just didn't know, for our utility rates and things like that we pay, is it something that we need to plan out for the future if it's infrastructural, and what's the plan if that is the case?
Well, I think we've got a pretty well-defined plan for infrastructure improvements. And we're definitely investing more in the system than we have for some time. I think that we've moved from a more reactive to proactive type of operation as far as that goes. You'll see in some of the goals and objectives there, for example, 70 wooden poles replaced a year. And we've done that for a couple of years now. So by the end of this year, we'll have replaced 200 or more poles out there on the system. Same goes with some of the older electromechanical meters. We are working on a plan to convert our older 4,160 volt distribution system to 12,470 volts. About half of our system is still 4,160. So it's a 15-year plan. But we've got a plan, and if we've got a plan and we've got the money to get it done, we can keep working. But we have had a lot of squirrel-related issues this year compared to other years. And I'm not sure how much more we can do about that as far as the squirrel population goes. But we haven't had a lot of other failures of equipment in that regard. Let me say that. And our availability, average availability for customers still exceeds 99.9%. on an annual basis. So we take that very seriously. We look at that reliability indices or those indices every month, and we share those with you in the report that Derek provides to you. So we are keeping an eye on that, and we hope to continue to see improvement as we continue to make those improvements on the system. But the first year, well, 3 years ago, let's say, you may recall, we were in that financial deficit situation. So we only had $200,000 of capital dollars available to spend on electric system improvements. So we've gotten out of that situation. We're well on our way to getting a fund balance that we should have in the electric fund. And now we've got about $1.5 million a year available. So we're able to get a lot more done now than what we were 2 or 3 years ago from a just financial resources standpoint.
I'll just echo that. It seems like this year we've had more animal strikes for whatever reason, and they've been isolated at the substation.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there are some additional measures we can do around the substations to discourage squirrels, but the good thing is the system's reacting the way it should, right? Obviously, there's a short, it goes default, things pop, but then tends to obviously
Protects the equipment. But we do some live animal trapping too around that south substation. We've removed quite a few raccoons and cats from that area over the last 3 years.
We've got some Louisiana family members who can probably come up and help you.
So we haven't seemed to have any problem recently with raccoons or cats, but it's been primarily squirrel issues for us.
I would also just say on the communication side, I think it would be beneficial if even just once a year, we share a little comparison of our outage time for the year, our rates for the year, compared with other utilities in the area, which I think we consistently outperform them. So just if you're not comparing, because you don't live out in the township or whatever, to see how much actually better our utility is performing, you don't know. All you know is like, today my power is out for an hour. What the heck,
Yeah, and we've regularly over the last, I think, 3 years received excellence in reliability certifications from the American Public Power Association, which is the national organization of municipal electric systems like Marshall's. So to get those, you have to meet their criteria for reliability. So we're pretty proud of that too.
Yeah, I think that would be good what Councilmember Gates has said as well. I still hear from community members that our electric rates are higher than everybody else. I'm like, that's not true.
Yeah.
We're lower than DTE and consumers, so
Right.
just to put more information out there to reinforce that.
Yeah.
Our electric rates are low.
We are having our rate consultant, Courtney and Associates, update that. We did it last spring and we'll do that again this spring and share those results with you. But yes, we were, with the exception of the very largest customers, less than DTE and consumers in all rate classifications.
Two other questions, sorry. On electrical, I was just thinking of this randomly, but I think it's an electric thing. Might be street department, I'm not sure. The city lights, the street lights, there's seems to be an inconsistency in color. Sometimes they go purple. Can you tell me why that is? What causes that? What color it should be?
Yeah, the purple lights are due to a diode failure in a particular brand of those lights. And they have been demonstrating themselves for probably 3 or 5 years now. We go change them out and when we see those, and for quite a long time, the manufacturer was giving us a free replacement for them. But I think the end of that 5-year warranty period has ended, so now we still change them when we become aware of them. But you may see other color differences because we still have some high pressure sodium lights out there, which are more orange looking than the LED lights, which are more like natural sunlight in their color, temperature, they call it. But to keep things more consistent downtown, we have ordered lamps, LED lamps that simulate that same color of the high pressure sodium lights, but are more energy efficient and have longer operating lives because they're LEDs. So.
Excellent, thank you. My last question is for the fire chief. With the new fire station being built out by the major campus, what is the relationship with Marshall City and Marshall Township Fire? What is the way to move forward with that fire station?
Yeah, we have no plans for anything with that fire station. Basically, it's just moving from another one's gonna operate like the current one is now. We do have a automatic mutual aid agreement with them for anything in these, what we call these areas where, let's take Michigan Avenue, one side of the street's Marshall Township, now one side of the street is city. For accidents or anytime those emergencies, fires reported, that thing, we both respond to those. Again, obviously, that station will not be manned at all, where our station is still manned with at least two, sometimes three personnel. So I mean, again, we have that big jump, but we don't got to get there. So it's going well. Just, I don't know if you know, but Marshall Township Fire Chief is one of our lieutenants here in the city. So that relationship is pretty strong. You know, we mirror a lot of the same policies and procedures.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all. We taking action on it? No, we already did.
We already did, so just an opportunity to have a little more discussion on it. Folks, any questions?
Let's move to item 12B, 2026 through 2031 capital improvements.
Yeah. So on an annual basis, you know, we review the capital improvement plan. It's a requirement of the Planning Enabling Act statute, state of Michigan. William obviously spearheads this as the finance director, but the reality is each director then identifies a bunch of projects that we think need to be accomplished over the next 6 years. It's a rolling schedule. I think what's most important is just because there's been a project identified in here. Good example is, you know, 25, 26, we've identified over $33 million worth of potential projects that we would like to see accomplished. Those are not funded, right? They get funded through the budget process, which we're actually will be kicking off here shortly. But this is our kind of a big picture planning document that we utilize to say, what are the needs in the fire department? What are the needs, you know, in the parks department? And what can we identify to say, you know what, if we had unlimited resources, here's what we think we should be doing. And that's why there's also a prioritization system in there. As part of the formal process, you have to hold a public hearing before its final adoption by city council, and that is on the, I believe, the next meeting agenda. But again, just like the action plan, we like to get this in front of you, give you the opportunity to have a discussion on that to see if there's something in here you have additional questions on, or if there's something out there that you think that we just need to incorporate into the plan and have that discussion. So that's why this is here today. And again, we're not looking for any formal action on this. It's really as a discussion item to have that one-on-one with the director team.
Can you speak to why this is not directly tied to the master plan?
Well, they're two separate distinct planning documents, and ideally you would see a lot of parity with that. So again, we always have an active master plan. And ideally, it would have been updated more frequently. Again, that's what we're working towards, and that's why we're taking our time and energy to make sure this most recent update's done correctly. But you should see some correlation to those. But again, this is a requirement. This is a distinct planning document that we need to do as a city and the director and the individual departments. But as they're putting together their individual items, they should be reviewing the master plan and how that interacts. But again, we will do this on an annual basis. The master plan will be adopted in 2025. And then as we go to prepare the CIP, we'll look back to see, again, there's some parity there and there's some connections. And the ultimate thing that ties it all together actually is your operating budget. And that's where you'll identify, these are the things that the master plan has ranked as priorities. How does that reflect with the CIP? And of those CIP projects, how can we get those funded? So.
Are there any questions or comments regarding the 2026 or 2030?
Comment, something I've been harping on for a couple of years now is the skate park. And I know that we do have some funds in here for that this coming year, which I think is great. I do think it's something that we need to get done. It's a big liability. It's in terrible shape. You see people out there still in the ruins of that skate park. Every time I'm out there, I still see people trying to use that space. And I just think we just need to pull the trigger on that, whether it's with Marshall House funds. I know there's some funds from Cronin Foundation. Maybe they would even be willing to kick in a little bit more possibly, I don't know, but I just think that that's something that we need to get done. I know that, you know, young kids and teenage skaters or whatever are maybe not the constituencies that show up to meetings and advocate for themselves, but especially in the context of Ketchum Park is, you know, it's our crown jewel of parks in Marshall, right? I think we need to get that in order because it just looks really unfortunate on that side of the river.
I'll piggyback on Jacob at the Ketchum Park. Really, before we have any other parks, we have to take care of what we have and make sure that they're well kept and the equipment is up, at least usable in the area surrounding it. It's groomed and nice. And, you know, I know that I talked to Derek a couple times this summer and Jacob did about some equipment that needed repair. And then also been taking my grandchildren and going around and it hadn't been trimmed, you know, inside of Kids Kingdom. And it was like, why? We had, you know, that the lawn was mowed, but the trimming wasn't done. And so, you know, just details that make it usable and make it friendly and safe and enjoyable for families is going to be a huge, before we take on other projects, we need to make sure our present projects and our present parks are well maintained for the enjoyment of everyone.
I'd like to see community cameras become a one priority. From that perspective, really.
Connects with really keeping some of these assets that the city has in good condition. Just the deterrent effect of preventing vandalism and stuff.
What's going on with the small fountain? Is that, am I wrong, but has that not been running for the last couple summers?
Carver Park.
Yeah,
It's ran.
Okay.
It does, there's some underground plumbing
Issues? Okay.
issues. It leaks.
Okay.
But we have ran it the last couple of years.
Okay.
It does get started up a little bit later and shut
Okay.
down a little bit sooner than the big fountain.
Okay. And then what's going on? Any pickleball courts coming? I've got people really wanting the pickleball court.
Oh, yeah, actually, when we move to discuss the capital special projects funding, we'll talk about that athletic field expansion as part of that, which is that splash pad pickleball construction. And yes, allocating some dollars potentially to move forward with that project. Yeah.
My Saturday morning coffee groups wanted some pickleball courts.
Fair enough. Fair enough. There's a strong yes group that advocates for pickleball.
And related to the comments about maintenance is, I know we're coming up on the budget process. Is that something that you're planning to add in there? Is more staffing or more hours for city park maintenance?
Yeah, so, and it's kind of, that one's bleeding into actually the next item too. So our last couple budget cycles, we've recognized that Parks just doesn't have the man hours to do the level of detail that we think the parks deserve. So, and as you know, our last couple of fiscal budgets have been pretty, revenues have met expenditures, right? We haven't had additional funds to add additional staff. Well, there is an opportunity, I think, with the additional of the capital dollars, one-time funds from the Marshall House, that will be able to fund a full-time parks position whose priority will be the maintenance of the park system. What that looked like, we need to flesh that out during the budget process. But I think there's an opportunity again to use maybe some of those one-time capital dollars to free up some operating dollars so that, we'll be able to have those funds to do that. And again, as our tax base grows, that's how we're able to have more additional revenue to fund some of these things that we've identified as priorities.
I think that would be great.
If I may, just interject, we've been working on that kind of laundry list of items that we would hope that this person would be able to help us with in the parks. You know, because we're looking at it, is this, you know, a full-time staff, you know, year-round position, right? And, you know, coming up with items even during the winter time as far as like tree maintenance and things like that. So, we're trying to kind of balance that, positions, you know, responsibilities and maybe weave that in with some other, you know, other needs in other departments. So we're trying to figure out what, you know, how to fund this position and, try to pick up a lot of the needs for the parks.
Is there a possibility that, you know, when the weather is really wintry and inclement and maybe it's not a great time like right now to be out working in the parks, maybe they can do some facility.
Exactly.
Exactly. I
Exactly,
really
yeah.
want to do that analysis. You know, the DDA, there may be an opportunity. They have a dedicated millage, right? That helps pay for some things in the downtown. Is there some opportunities where that person could help with maybe raising the bar in our winter maintenance downtown too, right? Make it more inviting and pedestrian friendly for maybe some detail snow removal work, stuff like that. So we really, again, when we evaluate this position, before we recommend adding a full-time position, we want to do that deep dive analysis to make sure that we can maximize those. And I'm a big proponent of kind of shared duties positions, right, when it makes sense. So similar to the new administrative, you know, assistant that we have between public services and FiberNet, you know, how can we pair those things and maximize our bang for the buck?
Great.
I did have a question. I know we've still got the pavilion for the farmer's market in the CIP for, you know, a few years out. Have we, just as like a forecasting, do we have an expectation of where that pavilion will get built? Are we planning on the Green Street lot or?
We have ideas and to the point of the CIP, you know, we may not have all of the details finalized, but if it remains in the CIP, it tells us it's a priority of the elected officials. So that's why we continue to do some of that pre-planning, but the short answer is no. You know, that was one of the options. Does it make sense to do some type of project in the existing farmers market lot? You know, there's a big emphasis on the river district. Should that be an amenity that's incorporated in that? But does that then take away from the connection to your downtown business district? So a lot of those things need to be evaluated and weighed. Or is there a third location that we're not even thinking about that makes a lot of sense? So again, we keep it in the CIP because we know that that's a priority and that's a project that we should be evaluating, but maybe short on some details until, again, we actually have the dollars that we can then invest in it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No action to take on this at this time. There's the public hearing coming up. Item 12C, capital / special projects funding. Manager Perry?
Yeah, so first I just want to preface this by saying we just had our audit review and our requirement is to have, you know, 25% of the general fund revenues, our expenses in our, what I call the rainy day fund. And according to the audit, we have 2.25 million there. So those really are dollars that we have set aside to cover our operations, cash flows, and if there was something, you know, catastrophic that essentially we need those dollars to help cover, right? And the reason I lead with that is because what that really means is we don't have a lot of extra dollars for capital projects, right? We just have always been able to cover our operations and maintain our rainy day fund that our auditors and good business practice say we keep in there. But we really haven't had dollars above and beyond that to look at things like the skate park or on the operations side, adding that additional, you know, parks employee. we actually have an opportunity now that we maybe can able to do some things. And part of that really is a result of selling the Marshall House. As City Council is aware, we sold that at the end of October. That generated a little over $9 million in additional revenue that now is unallocated because we're no longer owning that facility. So those were the proceeds. And then in addition to those proceeds, there was about $2 million available that we had to have set aside for the housing and urban development piece of it, plus our actual reserves that are necessary. So at the end of the day, we have about $11.2 million that are now unallocated. And as part of that, and part of this discussion really is, what do we do with those dollars, right? And what are some of those recommendations? So the first one we definitely need to do is take about $400,000 of that and earmark that for our MERS liability. So there were some employees, full-time city employees that were part of the benefit retirement program that the city has, and we need to carve out what those long-term liabilities are. So we're estimating Marshall House only, that's explicitly. Because again, we're no longer gonna have that fund, that program, those revenues, but we're gonna have those liabilities for a while. So we wanna earmark about $400,000 out of that 11.2 million there. One of the big things we're gonna recommend is that we also take about $3.8 million of that 11.2, and we have an existing bond that paid for the fire station and the MRLAC, and pay that off ahead of time. What that'll do is save us over $1 million in interest over the existing term of that bond, and more importantly, free up some dollars in your ongoing operating budgets to the tune of about $350,000 a year. So right there is your piece that would allow us then to pay for a parks employee. So let's get that paid off. Let's pay off, with an opportunity to pay off these buildings that are out there. Let's save over $1 million worth of interest, and let's free up some money in the operating budget. So unless we get pushback on that, that's probably something we'll start working with the legal team and the finance team, and we'll bring that to City Council to get that approved and move forward. We think that's definitely a priority that we should be evaluating with those funds. The second is the motor pool. Motor pool is one of those funds that's been starved. Again, motor pool is an internal revenue. So the motor pool buys the equipment, and then the departments pay rents, so that when that piece of equipment's due to be replaced, there should be funds available to replace that. Unfortunately, that fund has been starved because as we've had very lean budgets, those rents, when it comes time to cut things, what have we had to do? We've looked at, well, we're just not gonna be able to contribute the actual amount to motor pool that we should have been. So we have to reduce that by some percentage over time in order to get our budget to balance. But that has meant that we've starved the motor pool fund. So we have a replacement calendar and a schedule. So when a piece of equipment's due to be replaced, we don't have those dollars available to do that. We need to get caught up, and we're hoping to take about $1.5 million, honestly, of this total, move that to the motor pool fund, and be able to get that in a place where it should be. We currently only have about $500-some thousand available in the motor pool fund. That's a problem because, as you know, the equipment we buy is very expensive, right? I mean, a fire truck's $900,000 to $1 million. A dump truck, $225,000 fully equipped. Front end loader, a couple $100,000. So we want to be able to have enough cash in there that if, again, we were to have a catastrophe and we lost a couple large pieces of equipment, we'd be able to get out there. And if there's one available, obviously purchase that. Right now, we'd probably have to dip into our rainy day fund. And again, I like to keep that as kind of separate. So why adding $1.5 million? Where did I come up with that number? Again, part of the thing is the utility funds have been paying into the motor pool fund. And again, when it came time to replace that, we didn't have the funds to do that. So in the last budget cycle, we carved them out of the motor pool. So we also need to come up with not only have enough cash available in motor pool to cover equipment expenses, but we need to come up with a schedule on how do we start repaying back some of these enterprise funds too that have paid into the system. Money wasn't there essentially to purchase their equipment. So then they now have to purchase equipment out of the enterprise fund. How do we make those systems whole, right? And again, we don't have details on that, but I think we need to have that allocation earmarked in there to allow us to do that kind of thing, so. And then what that would do, then we'd have about $5.5 million left over for what I'd like to move towards what I would call either a capital / special project fund. So then that allows us to bring forward projects to city council to talk about, okay, we have the athletic field expansion that we want to do. You know, out of that $5.5 million, I'd like to allocate $375,000 towards that project so that we can begin construction of that in 2025. What are some of those other one-time projects? The skate park. Okay, we can leverage a grant, but we've never really had the money set aside for matching funds. Well, now we would have it. So we can go city council. We want to go for $100,000 grant for the skate park. We need $25,000 for matching funds. That would come from our special projects fund. Before, we've never really had that opportunity, right? We had to either dip into our fund balance or hope that we could squeeze it out of the operating. So again, that's kind of where we see this evolving. Again, not really looking for any action today, other than you agree that we definitely should look at paying off that 2014 building bond so that we can start that process and spend some money doing that. But as part of the budget process, like the motor pool, if you think that's a good idea, we'll present that as part of our budget proposal. Same thing with the capital special projects fund, and probably in the next 2 or 3 meetings, we're going to present the athletic field / Eaton Park project, because we really need to make a decision on that and whether we want to begin that construction. And if so, I'd like to do a $375,000 allocation. Now, do I think we're going to need all that? Not necessarily, because there's also an opportunity to raise $100,000 from a patronicity. So I think we need to go after that and go after that hard. So when it's all said and done, maybe it's only $275,000 that we need to do. And I also want to quantify that as part of that, all that fundraising includes that dedicated maintenance fund that we've talked about too, right? So again, even though we're allocating that, earmarking that, some of those dollars are going to sit there in a reserve fund that's dedicated for replacement of that park too. But from a project standpoint, we need to go ahead to say, yes, these dollars are available so that we can move forward with that project.
Because that's my main concern would be, what's the maintenance plan? If we're doing these one-time projects, what's the 10-year plan or whatever it is to keep those things up to par?
Yeah, I'd rather stay on the higher side of the contribution to that fund for replacement purposes, for updating sponsor signage in the future when those terms run up. And yeah, just so there is a surplus and not having to dig into other reserves later on. So that one's a high priority for me. I would support that. And everything you recommended earlier, I think, I support all of those.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess my own question would be about the motor pool. So you would anticipate that one-time cash infusion would be sort of a nest egg that would make that sustainable going forward.
That's really what we're looking to do, to bring that up to where motor pool probably should be. But just because of budget situations and pressures that we've had in the past, we just have not been able to make the contributions that we needed to.
So with that infusement of cash, then the regular schedule and plan would still be active and for the future.
As long as we can assure that those contributions that are needed can continue going forward, right? So that we're not saying, okay, instead of 100% of what we should be putting in there, we're dialing it back to 50% or 60% again. Otherwise, we're going to be back in that same loop.
On the topic of the athletic field expansion again, and then looking at I don't know where it is in the CIP, but we've had a lot of conversations in the past about improving our west corridor, walkability of sidewalks in front of the athletic fields. I'm assuming this fund wouldn't include that 375 you're talking about, doesn't include any sidewalks out by Michigan Avenue. Maybe we should look at that at the same time to improve that walkability. If we're going to be putting in a splash pad and a pickleball courts, or maybe more pedestrian traffic going across Michigan Avenue. So should we be looking at some of these funds to pay for some of that? Let's see, Marcia raising her hand.
Well, I think what's going to happen is you're going to have that Well, that 5.5, you back out 375, you're gonna have about, $5.1 million of that special projects funds. And that's exactly that pot of money that we start evaluating. You look at the CIP to see what's in there. We get our non-motorized plan adopted as part of the master plan. We identify what are those grant opportunities. And again, that's where city council then, as through our budget process, we bring these 3 or 4 projects, which may include West Michigan Avenue, pedestrian enhancements, or who knows what other project, to say, is this a project you want to fund? Kind of thing. At this point, I think it'd be speculative to start kind of earmarking some different projects that may be on your personal wish list or your personal wish list until we maybe flesh some of those things out and we get more involved in that, the budget process. Again, because of timing, I wanted to hit a couple things that I think we should do as we develop the budget. And then as we want to do more of a get into the weeds, deep dive on some of those other projects that city council may have, as a prioritized, we can have those discussions going forward too. It's just, I think we're going to be in a great place. We've never had a specific dedicated pot of money to look at doing capital projects, special projects as things come up. Or, again, we've been doing the CIP for years and years, right? And we've never really had, the funds to be able to start, checking off some of those things. Or we've had to do significant amount of, fundraising. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just that that can be a component of it, but that's really been our only dedicated source of funding, is to go out hand in hand to the community and say, hey, will you help fund this? And this will allow us to move away from that.
And theoretically, I would imagine it potentially would unlock a good amount of grant funds because we have then the matching funds. And we could maybe be a little more aggressive, I would think, about applying for grants because we know we can get the matching funds.
Absolutely. And that city council needs to hold us accountable to make sure that, that we're leveraging these dollars that we have as best as possible, right? And sometimes that delays things because grants take time. The Natural Resource Trust Fund, that's a pot of money that the state of Michigan gets from leases on gas and oil. And it used to be 300,000. It may be more than that now on an annual basis. But, between now and April, we should meet, now that we have a pot of money to match, going after those trust fund grants to make sure that, we're getting in a position where we can utilize those dollars and bring them back locally too, right? If we don't realize those grant dollars, some other community in the state of Michigan is going to. So we should be pursuing those things.
I would say also that maybe we want to think about developing a policy to govern that pot of money going forward so that it can continue to be that seed for other projects and doesn't, and we don't just have, or a future council doesn't just blow through it and then we're back to trying to fundraise for everything we do.
Well, and the reality is I will be somewhat protective of that because, yeah, exactly right. I don't want to get to the point where we're in 2 years, we're, spending $5 million, right? We really need to be judicial and thinking long-term on how do we utilize this and maximize these dollars going forward, for these projects. We have a lot of great projects, but again, we just need to be really thoughtful on how we identify, prioritize, and spend these dollars going forward. The other piece of it, because these are one-time funds, is going back to how I started this conversation, 25% of our fund balance needs to sit there for a rainy day / catastrophe fund. However, when we get into a position and we start to grow our tax base, if there are dollars that exceed that on an annual basis after the audit, one of our recommendations is going to be if we have an extra $100,000 above that 25% threshold, we're going to recommend that you move that money to this special project / capital projects fund, right? So there are some additional new revenues in there besides just interest growing on that. So that will help provide some additional funds too.
Did you know, one of the big dollar items that we know is out there is Brooks Fountain.
Yep.
And so, I know there's been some fundraising done for that already and it'd be great, if we could, engage the community, more and cause that's obviously a community icon and, I think a lot of people would love to support its repair and restoration. But definitely, to be able to leverage these dollars, to help make that a reality, I think that'd be great too.
Yeah, we're looking at the RAP 3.0 project. And again, congrats to the city of Marshall. There's been a RAP 1.0, which we secured $600,000 for the activation zone. There was the RAP 2.0. We secured $1 million for the athletic field. And now there's a RAP 3.0. And I'm not sure how excited they'll see an application from us again and how successful we'll be, but I think we need to go after that. And one of the two projects, well, the one we were actually in discussion about was the South Kalamazoo pathway, right? We know we want to make a nice wide pathway from the downtown to the river district to create a connection. But I think one of the noticed that there was a historical preservation piece in there too. So we may investigate that as trying to go for the fountain too. So the way we look at that is our bicentennial for the city is 2030. And that to me seems to be like, that should be our flagship kind of, project for the community as we celebrate 200 years as a city here. So
Dedication.
rededication, right? Look at redoing the entire park and the fountain and all that. And that kind of is a nice segue to our next piece, because as we start identifying some goals in there, I know Marguerite has one related to the Brooks Fountain as far as, doing some additional inspection of that and all that, so.
Elaborate a little bit too on, I know we spent a lot of money on it in the past, and we just got a grant recently, and then now I'm looking at 27 is 750,000, 29 is 30 is 500,000. Is that electrical? Is that like the structure? Is that both? Is there something else we need to do so it doesn't cost so much in the future? Just the fountain. Yeah, the fountain.
The fountain, yeah, so we've been looking at this over time since probably 21, 22. Historically, we've done a lot of we've done coding work too, like the coatings have failed and then we recode it. And that's been like the maintenance, and even that is a significant chunk of change when those need to be done. I mean, that's $200,000. And that has been like either fundraising or, different things, I understand when that's needed to be done. But so we're at a point, and I think we had a work session in 23-ish regarding the condition of the fountain. We did a full condition assessment on the structure. And that coding process over time and the environment in which the fountain lives, right, is wet. And the original material that the fountain was made out of they don't play nice together. So our underlying structure of the fountain, from the steps and up, or at the top of the steps, so we call that the upper basin and up. So the upper basin, the columns, and then the architectural term, colonnade maybe escapes me. There's a lot of different architectural components of the fountain.
Sitting next to an architect.
I know. Letting her struggle. So, in that work session, we proposed options, and the result of that work session was we need to essentially replace the existing structures, upper basin and above. It's all full terracotta. Underneath the coatings and what the surface looks like, the condition is not good. It's not going to last. And recoating is not going to fix that. So we're looking at that those dollars are based on a full replication of the structure from, the top step and above, out of a material that's not terracotta. We're actually did some preliminary look with a consultant, and it would be, I think we landed on a marble material. It would not be coated. This would be a material that can live and be in water all the time, and it would respond well to that. It's heavy, so there's some structural underlying components that would need to be done, but that is the big picture plan at this point, and that's why those dollars are so much. In the meantime, we need to get it to that point, right? So right now, the lower basin coatings are not good. It's been difficult to keep it clean because when the coatings start peeling, that's cracks and overlapping of coatings that allow bacteria to grow. So we do need to coat the lower basin this spring. And, I put that in that 24 action plan. And we need to get a full detailed laser survey of the basin as it exists today. So one thing that kind of came to light when we had the car go into the fountain, and then me, thinking about the existing condition and just imagining what it may be underneath, what we saw based on we took out cross sections of components to look at what was there. And I'm like, well, okay, we get a big storm or, there's an area that's decaying more rapidly that we can't see, don't notice, all of a sudden, portion of the fountain crumbles. I mean, honestly, I would not be surprised if that happened, right? Like if I get a call in 3 weeks saying like component of the fountain fell, I'd be like, okay, And so that laser survey, my point being is I want to do that now so that we have the most accurate representation of what it is today, what it was intended to be. And then, because it's changed over time, all the coatings have filled in gaps. Some of the details are muddy. Thank you. I was gonna say gloppy, but muddy is better, right? Because the coatings come on and like you paint over something 20 times and it changes the architectural. So that's why those dollars are there, because that estimate just at this point is 1.5 million for the new structure from the steps and above. And then there are other components, right? So we need to do some water treatment of the system to keep the water clean. We need to revamp that. Electrical's not in bad shape. That was redone in the push in 2008, I think, was a big fundraising push. But another thing we've heard loud and clear from family members of the Brooks family is that the city promised after this 2008 fundraising push that they would be setting aside money, that they would be doing the right thing. And so we heard that loud and clear that we need to, fundraising can be a component of it, but I don't think we can rely 100% on fundraising. Plus that's a lot of money. That was very long-winded. I hope that answers your question.
Helpful.
What you're saying is the actual underlining structure,
Right.
whatever that is,
Yeah, the terracotta material.
Okay.
Yeah,
but we're seeing fault in that.
yes, it's failing. Yeah, because the coatings, when it gets coated, the coatings function, but then a crack happens and then the water moves in behind that coating and traps the water. Terracotta is a great material for building facade. It dries when it's exposed to the air well, but as soon as you trap the moisture in there, the moisture has nowhere to go. So then it just eats away at that terracotta.
Do these dollar amounts include reinforcing the underground to support all that weight?
There's a little bit, but we don't know that detail very well. We need to work on that. That 100 and I think 40,000 from Ford towards the
Right.
fountain.
Or,
Yeah,
provide
so-
$140,000.
We have an allocation of that. We do have some fund balance in the fountain fund. We would be using that money to do the coatings this year, the survey. We need to do further design and planning work on what that would look like. Go ahead.
And as you do this and as you're making these plans, are we again thinking ahead and saying, okay, we're gonna pay this much now in 10 years? I mean, we're gonna continue the maintenance and the upgrading of, we're not gonna say, oh, we did it. Okay, we're done for the next 10 years, right?
Ideally, we, at least with the upper portion, the coating maintenance goes away.
Okay.
Because no matter what material you use and you put a coating on it and then it's in water 24/7 for most of the year, it's just not, of all the technology of coatings we have today, it just doesn't make sense. So we really are gonna work on our material selection so that we don't have to coat that upper part. Now, the lower basin and the steps, they're concrete. They will probably continue to be coated in some way, shape, or form. Maybe if we have to redo concrete, there's some, staining, but concrete erodes when the water runs over it. So that has to be, the coatings protect the concrete in that standpoint.
I would just say, as much as I appreciate the date of 2030 and the significance of the, bicentennial there, we may need to look at it a little bit sooner, just potentially. The symbolism, already people are mad, right? That they see the fountain and if it looks a little yellow or looks, anything, right? People really take it very seriously. If any part of it were to, God forbid, fail or fall down, people would be very upset about that.
I would be upset.
Everybody, we all take it very personally, right? So.
I think we're taking a good approach to this, right? We're going to, again, the steps and the basin are concrete. They look like heck. They need to be improved. So we're gonna do that coating to make that look good. We're going to identify, again, do the lasering so that, again, if something catastrophic happens, we have, a blueprint on how to replace it. And then, between now and that, maybe the big reveal of the marble upper columns and bowl, we look at like the water, iron removal system, right? That's one of the issues we have with it. That's why they go in there, they get rid of the orange staining, and then 24 hours later, it's back, right? Well, we need some type of probably under the fountain iron removal system, so there might be some intermediate steps that we can do too, again, because we have finally a capital special projects fund to do that.
And the construction of this, like the replication, the replacement, the actual construction, that's not something that happens in 2030, right? It doesn't start in the spring and gets revealed July 1 or whatever, however that works. I forget what the date is, right? That's something that's done in 29. Right, almost fully complete, and then some final work in the year that it's actually dedicated and unveiled, right? It's gonna be a long process to actually reconstruct.
And I think that there's a design process associated with that, right? So she's already had kind of an assessment done, but when you come to an actual, actionable plan, right? So there's some engineering that would need to be done about related to the weight of these, if they're gonna change the materials of it, right? So there might be some impact on that base beyond just coating, right? So I would think that once that kind of design process happens and engineering process, that would probably uncover, any kind of other flaws that are more immediate need. And like Derek brought up, this action plan, or the CIP, currently we have, we're targeting these dates, right? But if we were to uncover something that would, require moving some fixes up sooner, right? That could be adjusted and, we would come back to council with findings, right?
If I could just throw out there, it's when we actually start to move forward with this, if we could have a marketing plan as well, signs around the fountain, like, with the word restoration and like a 500 font, that's.
Yeah, let people know what we're doing and what the plan is and, in the paper, wherever, pamphlet, I don't care, but yeah, you're right. It needs to be, people have to know that we're taking it seriously.
It is our community icon. It's on all our branding and letterhead, so, it is Marshall.
The most, the iconic component of it was very loud and clear with the recent community survey with the master planning work. So.
Any other questions or comments on the capital/special projects funding? Being none, we will move to item 12D, 2025 action plan.
Yeah, so again, I think we've kind of actually touched on some of these things as we've had our discussion, right? Which is good, right? This is really the purpose of the meeting, but as we closed out our 24 plan, it's now time to get approval on our 25 plan so that our team can go back to their teams and we can all start, working on these identified projects. Last year we had 71, 72 goals. This year I think we're at 66, 67. And again, we really want you to just take a look at those and say, is there anything that we're missing? Or is there something that you're like, why are you spending time on that? We really don't want you to. And I should also preface this by saying, this is not necessarily our day-to-day work, right? These are kind of special projects, additional things that we want to get done. This isn't responding to fires, doing traffic enforcement, plowing the streets, that could be another page of a book over here. This is really our other projects, other goals, other things that we really want to try to get accomplished in 25. Just because it's on here doesn't mean it's going to get accomplished. Sometimes we run into hurdles, but again, it gives us a plan and provides some accountability, so I can look at the leadership team to say, how are we doing on these? What are the problems that you're encountering? Sometimes it's as simple as funding, but again, it's really, what do you want us to try to strive for and get done in 25? So here's the list. I didn't plan on reading through the list. You obviously had possession of it, but they are in bullet point form. So maybe you need some, more expounding on something, and that's kind of what we're here this morning. This would be the one item that I would like to get approval on, because again, we're already, day 11 of January, and I want to be able to take this back to our entire employee team meeting that we have next week to say, hey, here's what we accomplished in 24. Thanks to all your efforts. Here's what we're hoping to accomplish in 25. And this list has been approved by City Council. So, and then what we'll do is we progress on this list. 6 months in, we will provide an update to City Council, and then an end of the year too. We find that probably that cadence makes the most sense, as far as, because there's so many items, it doesn't make sense to provide you a report that says we haven't started on this every 3 months. Let's just give you an update at 6 months and then end of the year progress kind of thing. Questions? Is there anything the director team wants to share that says, here's why I'd like to do this? The only addition I had, and this came out of actually doing the weekly update, talked about, there's a lot of requirements that we have to do, obviously, as a public water supply, public wastewater, processor. And this year I noticed that we got to complete our risk and resiliency plan, our emergency response plan, our water reliability plan, and our asset management plan. So those are 4 big plans that public water supplies have to do. And I think it does rise to the level of we should have that added to our public services list. Just because if nothing else, it lets the public know that, we're meeting our obligations as a public water supply. So I wanted to.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
When I was writing that yesterday, I'm like, put this on the action plan.
Right, no, I
But
think that's a good one.
It was on, it was been on our, we kind of started talking about it, last couple months, and then we had another meeting to actually get started executing some of it yesterday. And
Yeah, and the other one is we have the sewer pipe assessment program, which is on the sanitary sewer waste side, but we've had some discussions about new development, and we really need to refine our sewer collection model, which kind of allows you to assess, if you have this development over here, what's the impact, downstream kind of thing. So I'm going to add that on there too with that pipe assessment program. So that's another good one too. So those are my only edits since this was sent out to City Council. So I don't know if City Council has any questions, concerns, or if you're good with it. But other than that, this would be the one that I'd look for approval of that list so that we can get started.
I would just ask Chief Lankard, can you tell us what a drone program looks like for the police department?
So currently, over the last, the last 5 years, drones have been used a lot more, right? Throughout the county for like missing persons, to assist on fire scenes. I know Chief Erskine had a incident up in Bellevue, and they used like a drone was just used to light up the area, right? They had to extract somebody from
Cement plant up there.
Yeah.
It was like no lighting a mile off the road. So again, Eden County come with a drone and lit up the scene. And otherwise, we didn't have lighting. We couldn't get our trucks back there or anything.
And so drones have come, basically it's an aerial division, right? So for police departments, we used to use helicopters. We had a missing person, we'd call up MSP and say, hey, can you bring your helicopter out here and see if we can, use your FLIR and see if we can find the person, say. But these days, drones it's like your own personal, like extra
equipment that you can use in those situations. So not only will it help us, in the police department with that, it would also help fire department. It also has infrared where it can look at hotspots in buildings. In different sizes, obviously of drones too, so you have larger sizes and you have smaller ones that can actually go internal, building searches and whatnot too. So, we joined, I think 2 years ago, we joined, Calhoun County. We started conversations with Calhoun County. They had a drone program, so they made a countywide program. So, we can assign officers. We have an officer that's assigned to the program. He went through last year, got his, license, because you have, if you have a license to actually drive the drones, went through that whole class, got his license. And we're just trying to build on that to see, with what that looks like is looking at what drone is gonna help us out, city-wise, what's also gonna help out with the fire department, with our operations, and countywide, how does it fit in, right? With that as well, and try to pick look for some grants, look for some drones that would help us, and what we do. So that's kind of what we're looking to do. So, and we've made those first steps, like I said, joining the countywide team and getting him trained up. So he's been out, they just had an operation, county had an operation just the other night, and he was out helping them, live flying the drone, so.
To piggyback on that,
I had more of a one-track mind on
Yeah.
filming, and so this is.
Yeah, we also used them, when we had the Christmas parade this last year, we had the drone team was here doing surveillance, so, and we had it done here as well, so. So it helps out with the special events as well.
yeah, piggyback on that again, that's been on my radar too, so I was glad it's there. I mean, for a couple fire usages like that, I didn't even realize it could light up the air, but I knew about the infrared. But we've had some river rescues where we didn't know where they were at. Well, again, where do we launch our equipment at and stuff like that, so I mean, that'd be a quick one, and God forbid we have a train derailment, that would be a critical piece of equipment, because we don't want to send people into harm's way. Because obviously, what comes through on the freight line, so it's just a magnitude of uses for both sides on that.
Yeah, and build on that. So Battle Creek currently, their PD, they have, they're deploying them from their patrol vehicles. So there's a patrol officer on every shift that has one that's in the back of the car, so they can deploy it quicker. Of course, they got probably the bigger area to cover, but that's looking at that in the future, like what does this look like for us? So it's just examining those types of things and what.
Are all of your officers trained, or are they somebody remotely tying into the drone?
Right, you have to be, like I said, you have to have an operator's license, you have to have that in place first, so we have one right now that is trained, but not all of them have been trained, so.
I'll be sending some of my personnel through that course also.
Yeah.
But if there was like a police chase, you could use the drone. To flying through town.
Yeah, once we have like a perimeter set up, we bring in the drone, they can do the search, that type of thing. So, I mean, there's futuristic things, obviously, I know that I've seen, where they're actually deploying drones, to an area to, get video surveillance before the officers arrive, right? Just to kind of, and that can be connected to dispatch. I mean, there's lots of futuristic things that are there in theory, and probably are being piloted. So this is kind of just trying to build ourselves up. So if that moves forward, we're kind of available to do that. So
You'd have to have a pretty big drone to keep up with a car chase.
Well, I was watching a different, I can't remember what the equipment was, but instead of doing chases, they actually deployed a drone.
Yeah.
And the guy pulls into his house, into his garage, thinking he got away, and the drone's like sitting over the house, like, and there he is.
That's another, like I said, just another tool, another thing that can be used for.
That's pretty interesting.
The technology is getting better too, so.
Right.
Yeah.
We wanted a helicopter, we didn't think you guys would approve that.
Yeah.
So.
Can I get a ride? What's the increase in traffic enforcement efforts?
So we did our strategic planning process. We just went through that a couple months ago. We looked at, and that kind of, did an assessment internally and assessment kind of externally, asking citizens. We sent out, I think it was like 57 surveys to different stakeholders in the community, asking, numerous questions about the police department. But two of the things that came back out of that, the two major, I guess, most commented areas was traffic. So we had like 25 people, I think, responded back, and out of those 17 out of those 25 responded that traffic was an issue. Right? So we know that, traffic is a priority, that we should be placing a priority on that. And then internally, we also, looked at it, and our staff realizes that, yes, we need to, we're not doing a very good job at it, right? Like, we need to improve that. So, it's just looking at that and how can we improve that? So a couple different areas. We also have the growth that's happening, with Blue Oval and what that's gonna bring. So it's just, how do we address that? So moving ahead, trying to, let's get some plans in place and let's do some things that are going to help us. And we identified that last year where we again, countywide team, right? We have the reconstruction team for accident reconstruction. So we have an engineer that works for us. So we got Jake involved, and he wanted to go down that road of being a traffic reconstructionist. So it's building upon those skills that we have and the interests. So we sent him to reconstruction school. So he went through the first phase, and he has a goal. I think it's a 3-year process of being accredited as a reconstructionist. We see that that's going to be something that would be very beneficial for us and countywide, and also with the increased traffic, we're going to see more accidents.
Right.
So added that. So that was one of the things that we identified. Some of the other stuff is just on a case-by-case basis, like on a shift basis, that's just gonna be more of a priority. So and we've kind of put it out to them. We haven't set those goals individually by shift, but they're going to be assessing that and setting some expectations for the officers to kind of address those
Is there more of
issues.
a presence downtown?
Yes, trying to be a little bit more downtown. I know, like, again, some of the things that we hear about, like, my biggest complaints are, noise and traffic downtown, right? And pedestrian traffic safety, right? So those types of things, we're trying to be out and about a little bit more, and they're gonna have some specific goals and tasks that they're gonna be setting.
Interesting
For sure.
regarding traffic, the chatter I see online, it's not like, darn it, the police pulled me over. It's like, no one ever patrols XYZ street,
Right,
It's
yeah,
like,
right. And
people actually want more, traffic enforcement. It seems
Right.
like, yeah.
Yeah, and the other area, we did motor carrier, so we did send an officer to motor carrier school last year too, to get that training, because semis, we're gonna see a lot more stuff. So and we used to have a motor carrier, and we don't have that specific training anymore, so we wanted to get officers up and going on that. So, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's the biggest complaint, and, there's 2 officers typically on the road, so that's the staffing that we have, and they're handling calls. They'll get to traffic when they can, but it's just building upon that in the future too, to see, do we need to dedicate, more specific timeframes? And we've done that too. We posted just, specific assignments just for traffic. So there's also been talks, OHSP has a grant program. So, and I know the county just signed up for that. So we've been talking with them, see how we can get involved with that too, just to have officers out there just doing that. And again, we recognize that seems to be a large priority, traffic speeds, all that pedestrian safety. So as we're doing projects that we can, impact design, we're gonna be doing that too, right? So we know that maybe the streets don't need to be as wide, or how can we, again, design a street that encourages you to drive slower, drive the speed limit, without having an officer underneath the speed limit sign, right? So, and I can add to that, we'll go on forever on this, but last year too, like the other thing that we're doing, I mean, we have these portable radar monitors, right? So we usually when we have a citizen complain, we'll say, okay, is this really an actual issue? So we put those radar monitors out there. So last year, I think we did 11 or 12 speed studies throughout the city. So it provides us that information to say, okay, is this really an issue or a perceived issue? So we're trying to do that, efficiently. So it kind of tells us, do we really need an officer there? Do we not need an officer there? Or do we need to, what that looks like? So we do have that aspect. And as Derek said, we've really been working with DPW and kind of assessing traffic control. Like, where do we need, what can help us as far as pedestrian traffic, or where do we need stop signs? What can we change? So we have been doing those assessments. I mean, last year we did like 17 TCOs. So we haven't done, and I don't think we've really, focused on that. So this year we'll be looking at the same thing, looking at those different areas in signage and what we can do to improve traffic safety.
I did want to, while we're talking police. The improve the school resource officer program. I'm curious if there are specific issues that you think need improvement, or if there was just more of a broad.
So I think more training with staff. I know Drew's been working on, they just finalized their emergency operation plans and updated those last year. So it's kind of incorporating those with us for our response and their plan, right? So we want to do more of that, increase those trainings. And then the contract with the schools is going to be up this year, so we need to have those conversations to get that renewed too. So, but I think he's doing a good job there. I know they really like Drew, but he's busy too. So, and helping out with operations. So, and it's really assessing too. Do we need more assistance there, or what can we do to improve that? So,
Where does he spend the majority of his time, like as far as buildings?
Probably, I would say it splits between middle school and high school, but it would depend on the day. I would say it's probably most of his time is in those two buildings. Maybe, and it just matters which week it is. It could be high school, maybe more in middle school. But we have seen, in the elementaries as well, because we have had some incidents there, and and he does the proactive things of reading to students and
Drew does a good job.
He does a great job.
Drew does an incredible job.
Yeah, I've seen him at football games.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, he's
he's really engaged, yeah.
Yeah.
My kids love Drew.
Kids love him. He's really good. For the police or for the fire chief, continue working with Ford to properly prepare Blue Oval LFP battery manufacturing. What's that looking like?
Yeah, every 2 weeks, right now, I meet with, have a online meeting with the Ford Suppression and Safety Team. Since it's gone more to now, we're getting into the emergency operations. I've had Chief Lanker sit in on that. They hired a security emergency response person out there now. It was former Albion Public Safety Director Scott Kipp. So we're working with him on, again, what do we need to do? Both sides working on those emergency response plans, not only just for fires, but even like medicals and machine rescues. That stuff comes with that stuff. So it's been a big help, and we'll continue to do those operations, working and training their personnel. So it's cohesive when we do have a response.
So will they have their own fire repress?
You have what they call emergency response team, and only thing that they will do is what they call put out an incipient stage fire. They see a machine on fire, again, they'll take anything that they can do with the extinguisher. They'll rely on us to do everything else.
So we have the ability to go out there and put out an electric fire, battery fire, something to that magnitude if there was ever a situation?
Yes, they got a state-of-the-art suppression system.
Okay.
They got 3,500 gallon a minute pumps just for their fire suppression system. It's just separate from the municipal water supply there that they can get out of there. We can go in and hook up hoses, sometimes even without supplementing them for pressure to fight a fire. One of the things, that big a building, they'll have what they call pathfinders. Hey, we're going to meet somebody at door 17, and that's where you want to go in, and that person's going to lead us. You get to the door, hey, through that door and to the left is where the emergency is at. So those are the kind of things that we're pre-planning.
Okay.
The tank size, the municipal tank that's out,
Yes, okay.
the ground storage tank, that size is driven purely off of fire flow needs, right? For the city supply of water. And that's, our city hydrants, city water main maintained, on site through an easement owned and operated by the city is our protection where fire is used to coming in and hooking to those hydrants. Just wanted to be clear that there's actually two systems, right? They have their own system with their own hydrants. Well, and hydrant, it's different. It's a suppression system where we have our traditional hydrant water main loop completely around the facility with hydrants every couple hundred feet to hook up.
Well, you're on the fire side, there's one more program that I'll be coming to you for approval before we implement. on there is the door-to-door smoke detector program. I want the council to be able to sign off on that and be behind that. Basically, what our plans are, is actually really literally going door to door to all the single or duplex houses and installing smoke detectors as required by the current code, which is, one on every level, one in every sleeping area. These are going to be 10-year smoke detectors. They don't got to change the batteries in it. It's gonna give us the opportunity to also plan a home fire safety plan. We know again, when we're going, that may not everybody be home, but we've ordered some door hangers. Hey, we've been here, so please call and do this. If we actually did this when I was just at the firefighter level in Battle Creek, it was crazy, I thought it was, but smoke detectors save life. We've had 2 fatal fires since I've been here in 2020. And both of them, same thing, neither one have a working smoke detector. One of them, I don't know if it done any good. That was obviously the explosion house there on Clinton. The other one was a couple years ago here on Fountain Street, where the actual 911 call come from somebody inside and he couldn't get out, blocked from the fire station. Fire was too far advanced by the time we got there, a block away. Crews did an excellent job. So that tugged at my heartstrings. So I said, okay, the state fire marshal said, hey, we'll give you all the smoke detectors you've done, but the caveat is you have to install them. That's the state rule on this. We had this program now, we still do this. If anybody called, we go and install these smoke detectors for free. Knowing what I know, based experience, not everybody's gonna let us in their house to install smoke detectors. And that's not acceptable to me, so I gotta do something. So it's okay, I can't give them the state provided smoke detectors, so I'm looking for a grant funding source to at least leave them enough smoke detectors that they can be protected. Again, as you know, I applied for a community foundation grant to do that part of it and stuff and that, and then, the materials to do it. But that's our plan. But before I do it, I want to have all my ducks in a row, have your approval, and then we'll do some, obviously, letting the community know why we're going door to door. That's going to be a big part of it. It's not going to be just, why the heck are you knocking on our door?
I love that idea. I have just one last question. Under community development, I lost it. It was about retail. Yeah, the retail. Thank you. What's the retail piece under community development on, where'd it go?
Retail cannabis.
Is that the
Yeah, the cannabis facilities. There it is. Investigate opportunities for retail cannabis facilities. What's that?
Well, I can actually speak to that and then you can expound on it, but this is actually a carryover from the previous action plan. There's been discussion. So at some point in time, City of Marshall made the decision that they were not gonna allow retail. We were only gonna do the grow side of it. The retail piece, is where the state of Michigan provides significant, revenue, really. I mean, like $60,000 per license, I think was what the most recent allocation was from the state of Michigan. And I guess we really wanted on there to have this discussion again. We have the grow facilities, which generate the odor, which really is the biggest negative to the cannabis, industry. Should we be identifying areas that make sense for retail cannabis locations? And if not, fine, the discussion's closed, we can check the box. But we just need to recognize that we're leaving revenue on the table that other communities are receiving. And again, we have the industry here. We have the biggest negative, which is the odor. What is the big negative on why and where should they be, if anywhere?
So in 2016, and my year might be wrong. When we voted for the growing facilities, one of the caveats to that was no retail in City Marshall. I believe Marshall Township adopted that same thing. Was that actually in, maybe bylaws isn't the right word, but is that somewhere in there where that we have to basically
Probably in city charters.
city charter somewhere? It was not listed as far as no growing facilities in the city of Marshall.
We don't have any cannabis language.
Huh?
So there's no cannabis language.
There's no cannabis language, so when we vote, so, okay.
was there actually a citywide vote or was it just
think
a
it was
city, or did city council
City
just
council.
adopt an ordinance?
City council adopted the ordinance, I
Right.
believe, yeah.
Right. So what that would be an ordinance change if, again, that's where the city council wanted to do that evaluation. You would change the ordinance.
Read for weed remarks?
What was it?
Read for weed remarks? For Jack Reed for weed. So are we actually, so let's say we go in that direction. As a city, are we allowed, if we were to adopt retail within the city of Marshall, within the city limits, are we able then to put restrictions on where? Or is it anywhere they want to go within the city of Marshall? Because I do not want a retail shop down.
No. So it would be, our recommendation, again, we haven't gone in the weeds on this, but essentially, we'd probably be recommending some type of overlay district so that you would identify where you think these types of facilities make the most sense in our community, right? So.
Because this has the
is it-
possibility to turn into a citywide garbage situation.
Oh, absolutely. Again, this is really the purpose of the action plan, right? So if city council says, we don't even want to investigate this, staff, don't waste your time and energy. You tell me to strike it and we don't mess with it anymore. However, it was on the previous year's plan and we didn't accomplish anything with it, so it rolls over to this year's plan. But that's really where this is, you are identifying a work plan for me and the team and where you want to spend our time and energy.
Right.
Have any of our growers requested retail?
So none of the growers specifically have requested it. However, there have been overtures that said, listen, if this was something that was allowable, that there's potentially that they would move forward with a retail establishment, maybe within their actual grow facility. And maybe do some type of delivery or even staff stores, right? There's a lot of industries that I think Paragrow and Allergan, who makes medicine, they have their own employee store kind of thing.
I
So,
was thinking, we can keep it right where they're with our own growers and within their own footprint.
factory drink.
But is there a concern, I know we talked about this several years ago, is there any concern about a lawsuit if we do not allow it, continue to not allow it in our ordinance? Retail, I've heard of other communities being sued and
Correct.
and the retail establishments winning.
Right.
And then it put it all over town. I think
Right.
James and I talked about a community, I can't remember
I
which.
thought it was Mason, but I could be completely wrong, where it wasn't there and then it was voted on, so therefore it was citywide.
Our attorney Rivera, I think, has mentioned it in the past too, that that's happened, so. If nobody's requesting it, I doubt we have a real concern, but I mean, it's in the back of my head. I want to get to that point. So,
We can do some investigation. We can talk to the board and see if there's concerns from that perspective. And follow up with, the group.
but I'm just one person, but I don't have any objections of continuing to research this and looking at what areas make sense and then putting it to the community and council for feedback.
I'd definitely want to be able to control it, rather be so proactive rather than reactive,
Right.
yeah.
And density control too, so there's
Mhm.
not like 27 and
We don't want to be the, yeah.
10 feet,
Yeah, I
We
think,
don't want to be,
density control of it.
I can't imagine, like, if we were to allow it in the grow facilities footprints, they're gonna get a whole lot of traffic anyway. There's so many grow and Emmett that are right on the main drag. For a convenience factor, our industrial park is not convenient for those wanting to go out
and you
there.
are seeing some starting to close now.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
so, I can't imagine it being a huge nuisance, in my opinion.
well, I think if we were to allow it, it would be not only in an overlay district, but I would even say, the way we have the grow facilities is like only so many per,
Mhm.
area. I would be in favor of that too, because absolutely, if we were to allow it, no way we're gonna let it be like it is in some municipalities where it's wherever they want and like a row of them kind of thing, so definitely.
Okay. So my takeaway is leave it, investigate that, and if we were to, and the appetite would be a potential overlay and really keep it where it's existing as far as the grow facilities, so.
I did have an item that I was thinking of as something that could be across our public service and electric and fiber net to modernize our communication, our options for, you know, reporting an outage or requesting services. You know, either just something, you know, I don't know if we actually have like a ticketing system for any of these. But something that could feed into, you know, automatically into a ticketing system rather than have to dial that phone number and talk to someone, you know, just to be able to, you know, again, report an outage at 2 a.m. You know, maybe get help with, you know, I know there's a fair number of pretty advanced bots now that, you know, customer service bots that do a pretty good job with being able to handle basic requests. You know, I'd love to see something. You know, like I said, it makes sense to me that it'd be, you know, across services, so we're not sending people to multiple, you know, different systems. I love, you know, seeing the improvements to online billing for finance. You know, that's a frustrating area. That's and you know, I understand BSNA is, you know, the gold standard in that area, but they definitely haven't made significant improvements to their online services. But so no, I'm just thinking if they're, you know, it's pretty standard now for there to be multiple ways to, you know, communicate with customer service, you know, forward agencies, and you know, I'd love to see something in that realm.
Yeah, I'll probably throw that under the finance goal just because a lot of times that's utility bill related, at least that's how I frame it in my mind. And a lot of these goals, we do work together amongst our team members, but we gotta fit it somewhere, but.
I don't know, if maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but it's kind of what we're doing with the CRC, is that what?
Right, so I'll just explain what we're doing to see if it is what you think. You know, our existing after hours, our after hours emergency service is not performing well. So not only did fiber transition, we are in the process of transitioning for all other after hour service. So electric, water, wastewater, and DPW. Most of the calls are, well, I shouldn't say it. It runs the gamut of like, in the winter, this is the phone that like even dispatch would call in DPW staff. Right, so it's almost, it functions as a little bit of an internal dispatching, but also a customer facing outage. Or I have a sanitary sewer backup at midnight, or I have a water leak and my shutoff valve in my house isn't working. I need you to shut me off at the road. All of those avenues. So we're transitioning to that. And they do have some additional services, but it's mostly a phone call in, right? So the after hours emergency number is a call. It's mostly just where that call gets routed. That's what we're doing with CRC.
And one of the options for, say, an outage, instead of having to talk to someone, if they're aware of the outage, one of the prompts is, if you're calling to report an outage, press 2 and whatever the button is, you push it, and it just sends that. And then another question is, if you want to follow up, text or call, press this button and they'll call you back. And you don't actually have to talk to someone if you don't want to. They'll shoot you a text saying it should be taken care of. If it isn't, give us a call. So that's something we're actually in the middle of doing right now.
Right. What I'm trying to think of more like the customer facing side of it, you know, where if you know, somebody's power goes out, they may, especially like one of the complaints I've heard over the years, and I don't know if we've addressed it, is that like, especially during the day when, you know, when it's not being routed to a call center, it's being, you know, routed right to the electric department. And the same people that are responding to the emergency are the ones that should, you know, are supposed to be answering the phone. So a lot of times the calls go, you know, the phone goes unanswered and they're working on the problem, right? I get that, but it doesn't help the customer, you know, to feel like they've gotten some progress.
Our post notification emergency communication or outage communication is challenging, right? Yeah, I think that there's ways we could do better, but it's usually like the way we would tackle it now would be like through updates on Facebook and something on the splash page of the city website. You know, I think I understand what you're saying, right? Like something almost like integrated into our website, like, do you have an outage report and it's like a chat GPT thing or something,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
AI.
Whatever.
Well, CRC, this is their bread and butter. They work with utilities and maybe there is, I mean, we were going baseline, hey, we just wanna know about the outage so we can get
Right.
people rolling. But maybe there's other levels that we can work with them to see if there's ways to enhance it, like an app on your phone.
Well, one of the options also is we're saying after hours because of a lack of a better term, but during normal hours, if there's an outage, I think they had mentioned they'll
We can handle.
notify that and actually the calls will be directed towards them and they have a staff of 100 people that can answer calls.
All right, so I think we'll add that goal and we'll flesh that out. And hey, if we're halfway done, then even better for us, right?
Well, and I, you know, obviously, like I say, I don't want to add labor, you know, to people who are already busy, you know, so, you know, anything that can be done with automation, I think.
There's some stuff on the website we may be able to work with on that.
And then at some point we have to convert BSNA from a current scenario to an online, right? They're gonna be
Yeah.
changing what they
We
have,
have to
what
go
we have to
cloud-based
do.
at some point.
Cloud-based, yeah, there's no data on that and
Right.
the feedback on it right now is just
Don't
pretty
do it.
negative.
We don't have to.
Right. I guess I just didn't know if some of those new features are related to utility billing, but probably not. That's not really something they focus on, right? They're more about like accurately assigning numbers where they need to go, not.
For sure, a lot of people don't want to dial a phone, you know, they rather go to the website,
It is, yeah.
power outage,
They
here's
would
my
rather
address, send me a text, the ETA when it's gonna be fixed, text me an update when it's closer.
I mean, I live outside town, right? I have Consumers Energy. You know, I get the automated, I do everything on my phone. I pay on my app. I pay my bill, I report an outage, I get an update about an outage, you know, via text. So I get it.
I just think, yeah, if we could modernize that customer interaction, I think that would be well received.
Yeah, and at some point, I mean, right now, we're replacing the antique meters that we have, but, you know, going forward, we need to eventually prioritize, you know, the smart meters, right? That really would recognize that there's an outage, you know, as it happens versus the customer call and say, hey, why is my power out kind of thing. So that may be something going forward too, but we'll look at, outage reporting, citizen response. I'm not sure how we'll word that, but we'll add that in there too.
One other thing, if we're done with that topic, that I would say piggybacking on the theme of communication, that I had on my sort of staff wish list thoughts. One was a park employee, which I'm very glad that we're working toward that. The other one I had was a full-time communications person. And perhaps, I know we have hired an administrative assistant who's gonna take on some of those duties, so maybe that will fill that gap. But I do feel like really somebody who is, I mean, I think there's enough work for somebody to full-time be communicating, especially in the culture we are now where your favorite celebrity is, you know, posting 4 times a day and live streaming when they brush their teeth. People expect information, right? I mean, people are attuned to receiving information all the time. And if they don't receive it, it feels bad, right? It feels like you're hiding. Why are you hiding something from me? Why is there no transparency? And not only that, they want it, they don't have to go searching for it a lot of the times either. They want it to be like, if they're mad at you, if it didn't appear in their feed or whatever, really. And that's just the reality of the way people feel. So I think that, you know, the more we could generate, you know, proactively generate the information, those, you know, have more avenues for communication, tell the story of what we're doing, you know, and all the great things that are happening. Even to go inside the wastewater treatment facility, which to physically tour that is amazing as a city council person to see, wow, this is where all that money goes, right? This is an amazing operation. There's just so much that could be done that I think would benefit the city and improve people's understanding of city government and improve their goodwill toward city government if we just continue to up our game in that area. And I definitely understand the idea of, from a budgetary perspective, of people wearing multiple hats, coming from a nonprofit world where everybody wears 6 hats, you know, but maybe it's not for this budget cycle, but just something to think of in the future. I think should be a priority.
No. No, we recognize that the communication is something we need to do better every day, and they hear it a lot, you know. They hear it a lot. If we don't tell our story, someone else will, right? So, yeah, we'll look into that too.
I did have one other, and this kind of goes with the, looking at the sign ordinance. Would it make sense to have a formal, action plan item for wayfinder signs?
I will say that the master plan, I mean, has a strong emphasis on wayfinding signage. I mean, there's no doubt about it that we're gonna be pulling that piece out of there, whether it be connectivity between the parks, the schools, the neighborhoods, or, hey, I drive into Marshall, where do I park, kind of thing. We speak to the river district pathway signage amenities.
I saw that on there, but
The first line on the community development list, it's under the city master plan and it includes the non-motorized master plan. I wonder if, wayfinding, if you're looking to kind of itemize it as, cause that kind of all goes together, right? Like I don't know, I guess it's motorized and non-motorized wayfinding, right? But, where we have probably more control is the non-motorized wayfinding, right? So maybe having an emphasis in that non-motorized master plan, regarding wayfinding would be, or we can make it a separate item.
Yeah,
it's definitely both motorized and non-motorized.
I would say if you want us to work on
Yeah.
a signage project, we should make it a separate action plan going forward,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if you
Yeah.
want us
I
to
know we have
develop a wayfinding sign plan or something like that.
we have a work session scheduled with planning commission to talk about the signage ordinance.
The thought was we would get a full city council seated and then work on schedules,
Okay.
just so that we're not rehashing everything twice, right? Let's get the full 7 members and work with the planning commission and sit down and have those questions and answer period.
Do you feel signage is a priority over anything else on the list? Like how, I guess I'm just trying to understand, cause it can get really, we've looked at this in the past. And I think everyone in their mind thinks, well, we may need more signs on Michigan Ave, right, to direct people to parking. It's a challenge with it being an MDOT right away, the sign requirements, you can't do anything that is nice looking, they're very traffic control looking. And so then it's like, okay, do we really want that downtown? So I guess I'm just, I don't wanna shoot it in the foot, I'm just like, it's a big component, like there's a lot of ways you can go with it, and I just wondered if there's a particular, is it parking that you're concerned about? Is it parks?
I'm
Is
thinking, obviously, parking is one thing. I was thinking more along the lines of, some of the language in the sign ordinance, is gonna put some limitations on people being able to put like sandwich boards out at the corners kind of thing. If I was thinking more along the lines of like directing to businesses that aren't on Michigan Ave kind of thing. But I was also thinking of something, conducive with the character of downtown, not, green and reflective.
So, yeah, I've got some experience working with a consultant that really can dial in and make some signs reflective of your community's character. One community, a lakeshore community I work for, they actually use the same design as the pier stanchions, right? And they had the silhouette of the lighthouse kind of thing. So, yeah, there's some good groups out there that could help us do that. So they're not so industrial looking like, a P with an arrow kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just caution, there's a cost to that, right? So,
Absolutely, yeah.
but some things are worth, spending the money so it's done right, yeah.
And I wonder if there's on the highway, when you get off the exit, there's the big metal signs that've got the square logos for Grand River, Schuler's, but they pay an annual fee to be on that.
Yes.
Could even look to that here. So if you want to be mentioned on this sign that Pastrami Joe's is this way, $50 a year, something like that. It would be minimal, but so there's a contribution, because I'm thinking of entire city road, their new location behind Southern Michigan Bank. They don't have that Michigan Avenue road exposure. But I feel like they could benefit from some sort of signage out on Michigan Avenue. Marshall Community Credit Union is another one where all these banks and credit unions in town, and they're the one that's tucked away. I think they'd love something out on Michigan Avenue. So I think there's opportunities, but yeah, what it looks like, what's allowable, all that. Like, see it as a
Towards
separate.
recreation, you know, people don't know how, where's the PSB? Where do I get a canoe? Where do I put in? Where do I, you know, even that kind of signage is
Yeah.
a thought.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about it. This, you're gonna see when you look at as the master plan's being developed, signage, wayfinding is an emphasis, and in the Parks and Rec plan, as you saw that when that was adopted.
We don't want to oversign either, because that's a big issue.
Well, what'll happen is then you ignore signs, right? So,
Yeah.
has to be done right, but
Scott, what were you saying about sidewalk signs? Downtown,
Sandwich signs, the sandwich board signs.
Yeah.
like,
did I miss something?
The new sign, the recommended changes to the new sign ordinance would not allow them more than 10 feet from your front door and only one. So like Pastrami Joe's right now put one on Mansion and on Michigan. They would not be allowed to do that per the changes that are recommended in the sign.
Right,
ordinance.
because it would be way more than 10 feet in either one,
Right,
either
right.
direction.
So then if that is approved, what other things can we put in place to help businesses like that? What the planning commission was hoping to do with that is if you had 5 businesses down on one side street, we don't want 5 of those businesses to all put a sandwich sign on that corner, and I feel that makes sense. So it's just kind of looking down the road, but
Yeah, like the Pastrami Joe's one is not an issue. It's the only business, down there really. I mean, the Fountain Clinic's not gonna put, I guess they could, but at the, on Eagle Street, there's all those small, storefronts there. And so you've got the potential to have multiple, if they were to decide to do the same thing as Pastrami Joe's does, it get real cluttered on that corner real
Looks like
fast.
Grassroots, we're two different businesses, so you got Tremont Roasters and then you got Grassroots.
Home Slice puts a
Where we both have a
Yeah.
sign
sandwich
out
board
there.
out on Michigan Avenue and
Yeah.
would allow them to do that. So what could we do for them?
Yeah.
well, it's a good, I mean, this is one of the reasons we used to have DDAs, right? That how to pay the additional millage tax, what are some of those bricks and mortar type projects, and maybe it is ramping up wayfinding signage for the downtown that has that co-mingling business type signage at the intersections or something, yeah. But yeah, as we're doing the sign ordinance, let's make sure we have language in there that's gonna permit these types of things, right? So we're not amending the sign ordinance, 3 months later.
I would just like to make things easier on the businesses downtown, not harder.
Absolutely,
Right.
100%.
Yeah, and there's value not having 10 sandwich board signs cluttering up your sidewalks for accessibility reasons, but we also want to be able to advertise and make that look attractive. So maybe there is some type of, corner sign that makes sense.
So I think a separate line would be one.
Yes. Yeah, and most of the focus has been downtown in the conversation, but what I'm understanding is I think maybe the wayfinding element is more important for the off-site desert, things like trails, trailhead. We had conversations about how if I really am trying to follow a trail through town, how do I need a few marking points so that I know where my turn is, right? So that I've had that conversation with some trails people, right? And then you're saying parks, right? Like making sure that, maybe there's something on Michigan Avenue that shows Ketchum Park, this direction, right? You don't need them everywhere, but maybe working on some key points, right? And maybe there's a consultant we can work with helping to find those key locations. Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments? Conversation? Any further comments? Are we comfortable?
So you wanted some sort of approval.
Yeah, I mean,
You wanted to-
if you guys want, my suggestion would be you approve the 25 action plan as presented and discuss, and we'll incorporate your discussion pieces in it. And obviously we can have it as an informational item at the next meeting too,
So I move we approve the 2025 action plan as presented and with the changes as discussed.
I'll support that.
Motion and support. Voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, we move to item 14 on the agenda, public comment on non-agenda items. Persons addressing city council are required to give their name and address for the record when called upon by the mayor. Members of the public shall be limited to speaking for a maximum of 2 minutes. Comments shall address non-agenda item topics. Public hearing items should have been addressed during the public hearing portion. Item 10 of the meeting, agenda items should have been addressed during public comment agenda items, item 6 portion. Is there any public that wish to address city council on non-agenda items? Adams?
Barry Wayne Adams again, 622 West Green again. A couple of things, doesn't matter how much water you send to the new fire station. It won't work on putting out an electric battery fire. Water actually accelerates the combustion. Once that runaway process is started, making a bigger fire station with more firemen, all it does is make a bigger audience to witness the combustion of the lithium. And toxic gases that are released from that directly upwind from the prevailing westerlies from the city. One major catastrophic lithium fire would irreparably harm the city. People aren't clamoring for more traffic police surveillance. They are asking for less traffic volume. And that has been lost. And your expectation that there are greater tax revenues to be coming down the pipe may not pan out, because the word is now that if the factory goes in, people are moving out of town. So, and you know, the increasing the tax burden on each homeowner does nothing to enhance the desirability of wanting to move into town. Marshall is already way overtaxed. For the amount of taxes I pay for my little house, I could have a house with twice the square footage in Battle Creek. The house of cards about the EV industry is completely falling apart.
Mr. Adams, anyone else wish to address council? Seeing none, move to council and manager communications. Have anything you wish to address?
I have a couple of questions. What are the next steps for discussing, or which groups are discussing the street closure process request for High Street from the hospital and the hospital 425 request?
Yeah, so the planning commission actually had the discussion item at their last meeting, which was it Wednesday evening? Was it?
Sounds right.
Yeah,
Yes,
last week. So planning commissions had their initial discussion
On both of those, or?
just on the street closure. Yeah. As part of that discussion, I think Oaklawn walked away, recognized that the planning commission's open to the concept, right? It's not just a closed door. So, but the planning commission needs something a little more tangible to react to, which ultimately we will too. So I think ball's back in hospital's court to put together some type of concept design. It doesn't need to be 100% design, but we need to talk about what would that really look like, right? And what would be those impacts to the street and the underground utilities, you know, is there gonna be a footer over a water main? And if so, recognize that it has to be rerouted, that kind of thing. So that's where that discussion is, and it's underway. And then, of course, I think I sent everyone the hospital campus overlay district, because part of that discussion that came out of that was, you know, we really need to dust that off, because obviously that happened at a point in time and what are those constraints existing with that, so. Which really is reflective of why the hospital's making the ask, because that's where they really are limited to go, right? So, and interestingly enough, there must have been contemplation of a street vacation because that actually was identified in the ordinances itself. Reserving the right to city council, which you have anyways, but anyways, it was, again, made apparent in there, so. Regarding the 425 request to move those hospitals into the city, it's really kind of sitting, I guess, tabled at this point. So city of Marshall, or the township of Marshall, I guess, had some requests when it was put before their board, or had some questions, concerns, or maybe the process, that kind of thing. So I believe they tabled it. Don't hold me, but I believe that's sitting out there. And then the issue with us is, in order for that to occur, those properties currently are not serviced by City of Marshall utilities, right? They're existing, they're in the ground, but the City of Marshall has not accepted those either. So we really can't move forward in our process until some of that stuff is fleshed out and is more mature too. So and that's just one of those requests I think that's just gonna have to sit out there for a while until some other things come together on it.
Yeah, I asked because it came to us, but
Yeah.
obviously it's not ready for us to do any
Right.
action on it. All right.
Right.
Staff will be working with, I'm gonna be talking to, DeGraw about the Oakland issue to try to get on the same page, with what kind of documentation, could then be presented, you know, and coordinated with the rest of the staff. So there's a little bit of work even beforehand to get us all both on the same page about what they need to do a little design work, but how much design work are we gonna ask them to do? So we're working on that.
That's mine. Thank you.
I have nothing.
I do want to thank staff, Manager Perry. This is a much better process than we used to go through, when it was 2 days and, much more, involved. So I appreciate, you know, we've laid out some ambitious, goals for sure. But just know that we really appreciate, you know, all of your work throughout the year and look forward to seeing some of these happen. That would be great. So, if there's no other discussion,
No, I just want to thank the team for showing up, right? I mean, I try to limit the amount of, you know, getting everyone together, you know, especially on a Saturday morning, and I'm sorry about that, but there are a couple times a year we need to do it, and I think it's critical. We need to have these interfaces, so again, thank you for showing up this morning.
I appreciate the ability just to have a really nice dialogue back and forth, right? So we don't have that in our other council meetings and, so. Thank you.
There's a reason why it's here, right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
hard to do this upstairs.
Right, it doesn't work up there.
I appreciate this format as well.
Yeah.
And the regular meetings are, you know, our business meeting, right? And typically we have multiple items we need to get through and address, and this allows us to take the time and really drill into these because this drives what we're gonna do for the rest of the year, so. We don't wanna come September and you say, why are you doing that? Right?
Or why didn't you do
So
that?
why didn't you do that? More importantly, maybe, yes.
Well, I always enjoy and appreciate this meeting every year. It's great. Yeah, so.
all right. No further discussion. I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So move.
Support.
Motion support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned.
Hey, Marguerite,